So last weekend I tabled at PokéCon Augusta 2026, and let me tell you about it. You might be wondering, if you're an artist or cons, you might want to start tabling. If you're an artist and you make things, you make zines, you make comics, you have paintings, you have artwork, whatever you make, you might be wondering, like, all right, it's accumulating. I probably should table at some markets and stuff, but like there's so many out there. There's makers markets, there's, comic cons, anime fests, you name it. It's a very, it seems like there's kind of a boom in these, in this market, I guess it's like a maker's market, but it's starting to seem like it's like kind of I don't know, at least from my angle, a pop culture thing, but I'm also coming at this from the lens of, or from the angle of, making comics and illustrations and stuff like that. So, yeah, you might be wondering, well, I'm not necessarily an anime or manga artist, or I'm not necessarily a comic book artist, but neither am I. I mean, I make comics, but I'm not, I don't work for Marvel or DC. I mostly just like to draw, but, the narrative aspect works really well with comics. And then, again, it's definitely an intentional thing to try to for me to be like, okay, I'm in the comics. Like, that's something that I can make. I can do my drawings. I can put them in a book, zines and comics, and then sell them, get them in people's hands. And it kind of satisfies both of those things. And anyway, this is all kind of beside the point. We're trying to figure out if these cons are worth it for you. And I'll tell you from my experience. So I did 3 previous anime fests in Augusta with this same group of people, and I was pleasantly surprised each time. The first time I sold a decent amount of books and stickers and stuff, and a couple of smaller, commissioned pieces, and I didn't have enough artwork. And my conclusion then was that I can make this type of convention work. I just need to bring more things that are anime centric, and that can be tough as an artist, because then you get into this space of well, now I feel like I have to make something and I don't necessarily want to, but you got to find the angle at which you're interested in it. So I grew up with anime. I like anime. I don't watch a lot of the newer anime. The last new anime I watched it's either going to be Death Note or Samurai Champloo, beginning to end, all the way through, fully invested in it. Have not watched an anime like that since. So I'm kind of out of touch when it comes to these things. But I will say this: the second and third time I attended the con, I brought more pieces that were, I grew up watching Dragon Ball Z, so I was like, I'm gonna do a bunch of smaller Dragon Ball Z drawings. All of those sold within the first 2 hours of the con opening up. So that was a success. I did a Dan to Dan drawing, which didn't sell. That's, again, trying to stay modern, trying to connect with modern audiences there, because it is a primarily, younger audience, but you do get some of the old dogs there. Especially some of the parents of the kids, they might be into anime. So when they saw I was one of the few people with Dragon Ball Z there, which was strange. I thought Dragon Ball Z was still super popular. Or I got some Neon Genesis and Akira. I'm one of the few people there that's oh no, I'm into the old stuff. So that was a fun little niche that I found that I could kind of exploit. So the third time, again, just did the same. I had new stickers, I had more drawings, and yeah, it was more of a success. And then my buddy, who I met at one of these anime conventions, tabled at PokéCon last year in Augusta and said he did pretty well. So I thought I would give that a shot. It seemed adjacent enough. I kind of knew going into it that it might be more of a, because there's the card game and stuff, and there's the video game aspect. So it might be more of a collector's market rather than an anime convention where it's it is about the media and I guess the art form, because there's cosplay and stuff. the PokéCon is kind of halfway that, halfway like a sports card and collectible kind of convention, if that makes sense. So it's a little tougher, I think, to sell as an artist at the PokéCon. After table fees, I broke even more or less. Probably took home a little bit less than table fees, but I was pleasantly surprised at what sold. I make comics and zines, and I have one comic that I can kind of say is like anime adjacent. It's in black and white. It's got like kind of those weird like body horror elements. I've had people say it reminds them of Junji Ito and what's the guy that did the Cat-Eyed Boy? I can't remember his name. But stuff like that. It's got some manga DNA in there. So I'm able to kind of market it in that way. But I sold a few of those Gut and Ghost books, which I was pretty happy with. And then I was really surprised. I'd made an Alf bootleg comic. Do you remember Alf? Well, he's back in bootleg comic form. That sold pretty well at the PokéCon convention too. I was very surprised. People usually aren't as excited about that idea as I am, but he did pretty well at PokéCon. I did make several original drawings specifically for PokéCon. As you can see, I'm working on Machamp here, Machamp Triumphant in the Frank Miller Dark Knight Triumphant pose. None of my Pokemon drawings sold, but I did sell a Dragon Ball Z drawing. So there might be something to just stay drawing Dragon Ball Z and the popular characters in that, and just if I had some advice, if you were thinking about doing an anime con, like if you had a choice between anime con or PokéCon, I would go with anime con. It's a little bit wider, bigger of a box to work in as an artist. And it won't feel like you're fighting as much of an uphill battle against people are coming there to trade Pokemon cards. I had several people coming up to my artist table wondering if I was willing to buy or trade cards. And I was like, no. Unless you want to trade like a really valuable card for one of my drawings or something, I don't mind flipping it later, but people aren't open to that really. But yeah, I would say definitely if you like anime at all, or if it has any influence on your art, you don't necessarily have to draw in a overt anime style, but if you grew up watching that stuff and you do comic books and narrative drawing, chances are there's probably some of that DNA in the work that you do. It would be worth doing some smaller drawings, 9 by 12, 8.5 by 11, hell, even do 7 by 5. Price them modestly. That's what I do. I price them at like $30 for a 9 by 12. And I also scan my inks so that way I can, create screen printing frames so I can pull prints later and put them on t-shirts. And, that's how I make my art prints and stuff. So like, even if I price them modestly, if they sell, that's just an indication to me that this print might also sell. So I can continue to make money off of that same drawing. So I don't really feel so bad if like a Piccolo drawing sells for $30. That just means I gotta start pulling prints of it so I can get another $10-15 per print. So yeah, there's a method here. But I would say it's definitely worth it. Pick something that you actually like. Don't force yourself to do it. Like I like Dragon Ball Z, so I'm using it as an excuse to rewatch all the Dragon Ball Z, and I'm going to try to draw every character in order of their appearance. And that should give me a decent gimmick online that people might, be interested in following. I come up with like a little visual motif that I can kind of keep riffing on, so I don't have to think about it too hard, other than like, find a good pose and pick a few like background scenes to put them in and stuff. But yeah, overall PokéCon, I don't know that I would do it again. Like I said, if I had the choice between an anime con and a PokéCon, I'd probably pick the anime con. I feel like I do better at those. They're a little bit more art centric, or people are at least a little bit more open to the art. They're not coming to trade like collectibles. Sometimes they are, but it's on the smaller side. Pokemon is almost its own separate thing, It's not just the anime, it's the card game, it's the video game. So it's kind of a hard market to carnival bark at, but it is doable. So yeah, I hope any of this information is helpful for you if you're an artist and looking to table at stuff. I would encourage you too if you have some conventions that are happening near you and you're unsure of whether or not you should attend, to table at them. I would say, just go and attend them. Go walk through them, see what kind of stuff is being offered. If you see artists there, ask them how their day is going. Ask them if they've had any sales. Obviously, maybe buy something from them if you're gonna be taking up some of their time. But most artists, they enjoy talking to you, especially if they got their work out. They love telling you about their work. But it's always good if at the end of that conversation it ends with even a sticker sale. Doesn't have to be anything big. But yeah, that was my experience at PokéCon. I hope this information was helpful to anybody who's interested in taking their art and trying to sell it, and they are having a hard time, trying to decide what cons are good, what cons are not good. I mean, it is a roll of the dice, but, there's information out there, and you got to do your detective work, and trial and error is part of it. Like I said, I've gone to cons. I went to a collectible card show one time and sold absolutely nothing, but ended up meeting Mike Hoffman, who was he's a comic book artist that worked for Marvel and DC, and he's got his own anthology series. And he ended up looking at my portfolio and giving me some notes, and told me if I ever have a story that I should submit it to his anthology magazine. And I actually did that recently. I have my 4-page Dream Journal story, Dreamland, is going to be in issue 36 of his Eerie magazine. I'll put the link in the bio if you want to. I think he does it through Kickstarter. You can grab it that way. But anyway, I was supposed to be ending that video here, but I had one last point to make. And yeah, I just hope you found this information to be at all useful or helpful if you're thinking about tabling at conventions as an artist. Thank you for watching, and if you're in the South, you can catch me March 21st at the Irmo Cherry Blossom Festival in Irmo, South Carolina, March 28th at Fluke Athens in Athens, Georgia, and April 4th, Greenville Anime Fest in Greenville, North Carolina. I hope to see you there.